So a few days ago, the vice president, the secretary of state, a reincarnated Joseph Goebbels, and the president of the United States spoke at the Charlie Kirk memorial event out in Glendale, Arizona. Now, many of us watching it play out at home were a little bit off-put. Something was not right. The memorial felt less like the celebration of a loved one and more like Roman Reigns enters the WWE. So what's with the pyrotechnics, you might be asking? You might be also asking, where's Charlie Kirk's mom, dad, sister? What about his friends? What about anybody from Turning Point USA, the organization that he co-founded? But instead, the guest list consisted of the entire Trump administration and also Tucker Carlson. So you got to ask yourself, is this a Charlie Kirk memorial or is this CPAC 2.0? Are the pyrotechnics necessary? Well, I'm here to answer that question, and the answer to that question is emphatically yes. The pyrotechnics were a must. They had to have them. They had no choice. They had to have the star power. They had to have the president's administration. They had to have all the glitz and the glamour because this is the moment they were waiting for. Let me explain. But before I go on, please quickly like the video, subscribe to the channel. That'll boost the algorithm and it'll also help me get these videos to you in the future. And don't forget to comment and share. Thanks. Listen, I grew up believing that there was a war on Christianity. I grew up believing that there was a war on white people. I grew up believing that this war would suppress Christianity so bad that it would eventually start killing us. I knew that day would come, because I was raised to believe that. Just as sure as I know tomorrow's coming, I knew that the war on Christianity would eventually come to a head here in America, and they would begin to kill us. Now, on September 21st, there was 200,000 people in Arizona that believed that exact same thing. Those 200,000 people in Arizona believed, just like I did when I was growing up, that there would come a day when they would kill us for being Christian. And there was 1 million people across the country watching that memorial, and they believed it. They believed that Charlie Kirk was a man of God who was killed for his Christian beliefs, and now he's a martyr. The belief is that there's this spiritual warfare happening between the devil and God, and it's playing out all around us, and that spiritual warfare was eventually going to manifest itself into a real war, a physical war here on earth. I've heard this since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. The oppression of Christianity was a key fundamental thing that our preacher talked about in the pulpit and that preachers still talk about in pulpits all across America. It's a war between good and evil. We're the good and everybody else is the evil. And when you're brought up that way, the way I was brought up, that spiritual warfare is something you're led to believe will eventually become physical warfare, you can see why people would believe this when you open the Bible. There's a lot of stuff in there about spiritual warfare. Ephesians 6:11-13 says, "Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers of the present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, stand firm." I can talk about Psalm 91. "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust." And it goes on about how there's going to be war. I can go through the whole Bible. The things that our pastor told us that we believed indicated spiritual warfare that was eventually going to become physical warfare because there was a war against Christianity. And this is why Charlie Kirk must become a martyr. To Christians, they took down a man of God in his prime. Doesn't matter that he was divisive in his life. Doesn't matter that he said or did racist things. Doesn't matter that he said or did bigoted things, misogynist things, Islamophobic things, or that everything he did seemed to divide us as a nation. Doesn't matter that he was hyper-partisan. None of that matters. All that matters is that he was a man of God. And that his dying is proof that the war on Christianity has finally came to a head and we must pick a side between good or evil. That is what Christian nationalists believe, and you better believe how serious they believe what I'm telling you I used to believe. Because he's a martyr, they're calling us to disregard his divisiveness from when he was alive. Disregard his heavy partisan rhetoric. Disregard his belief of the great replacement theory that he often sold as the truth. Disregard it all because this is something everybody's been waiting for their whole life. A martyr. the war on Christianity has finally become physical. The thing is that I grew up to believe, the thing that everybody in Arizona believed that day, and the thing middle America believes in has come to fruition. The spiritual battle has become a physical battle, and now it's on. Because the truth is, this is the ushering in of Christian nationalism, with a martyr atop the mountain. Now we can overturn democracy in the name of God. It's been done many times before, all throughout history. There are many examples of kings rising to power under the auspices of being handpicked by God, and we've heard people who support Donald Trump say that he was handpicked by God. This is not a stretch. Pharaohs in ancient Egypt were believed to have been intermediaries between people and the gods. Historical context. And of course, we have the divine right of kings, a doctrine that maintains a monarch isn't held to the standards of a parliament or other leaders, since their right to be a king is granted by God himself. This is how Henry VIII maintained power over England. You can see this happening as recently as, Donald Trump, a man of many sins, viewed by Christians as being anointed by God. Now, I won't dabble as to whether the assassination of Charlie Kirk was a setup, and this was planned out by some dark force, or if it was just a lone gunman committing an act of stochastic terrorism, which is the growing threat here in America, and I do tend to believe in the latter. But no matter what you believe that led up to Charlie Kirk being assassinated, the thing you got to understand is this is the moment that Christian nationalism has been waiting for, and they can't let it pass. They can't miss this moment. Everybody's been sold this bill of goods their whole life, so now it's time for the close. If you know anything about sales, you ever been sold anything? Ever went to a car lot? Ever had somebody knock on your door? There's a sales process. Sales process is to build you up emotionally, really, really drive the product home. But there comes a moment where you have to close the deal. If you don't close the deal, all of it was for naught. Charlie Kirk's memorial was them closing the deal to Christian nationalists that it is time. It is time to usher in our Christian nationalism. So even though it might seem like things have calmed down around the country, like the initial wave of screaming about the radical left lunatics was just a few days of banter after his assassination, no, this is just the calm before the storm. Because they just closed the deal. All the pyrotechnics, the big glitz, the glamour, the stadium, all the big names, it was all necessary to close the deal. And here's what the death of Charlie Kirk really means, and why the dog and pony show of his memorial had to be as extravagant as it was. Because Charlie Kirk, the man, likely changed a few votes from Democrat to Republican, got a couple kids to vote for Trump, and was pretty popular with less than 1/4 of the country. But Charlie Kirk, the martyr, he's at the forefront of the Christian nationalist movement, moving forward as the next government of America. Charlie Kirk represents democracy being overthrown in the name of authoritarianism, all in the name of God. But there's something important we got to throw on as a bit of an asterisk here, a bit of an addendum. People ask me, but Jolly, what happens when everybody gets to read the obituary we're all waiting for? Donald Trump's 79 years old. He seems to be suffering from congestive heart failure. We've seen his cankles. He's stumbling through speeches. He's having bouts of memory lapses, all play out in public eye. So what about when Donald Trump dies? That's the question everybody's asking. Won't this all be over because he's old? He's got shitty health. He's the one with the bad ideas, right? And to all those people, I say, if you think it's going to be better when he passes away, you are sadly mistaken. You simply do not understand that Donald Trump is not the man with the plan. He's the culmination of white supremacy in this country for the past 250 years. White Christian nationalism is a direct result of white supremacy in this country. Whether we're talking about the Civil War and the abolition of slavery, or the failed policies of Reconstruction, or the war on drugs, or even Donald Trump's own history of racism, throw a stone and you'll find an example in our history books of him calling for a return of the death penalty for the now exonerated 5. It doesn't matter what point in history you look at. This is the closest we've ever been to establishing Christian nationalism as a replacement for the systems of checks and balances and the Constitution itself, and a replacement for democracy. You really think they're just going to quit when Trump dies? You think that Trump brought all this in? You fail to realize all of that brought Trump in. Trump was just the youthful idiot that they used to usher in what they've done so far with Project 2025 and the roadmap established by the Heritage Foundation. He's the guy that would say whatever white America wanted to hear just to get ahead. This is a man that wasn't worried about taking political hits, who wasn't worried about the Constitution or the consequences, because he's never faced consequences in his life. Because he was born with a silver spoon up his ass. He's a Nepo baby, and he's gotten away with everything in his life up to and including harming children. Release the files. Donald Trump is a useful idiot for white nationalism, and when he's gone, who do we have? J.D. Vance, the useful puppet, who will usher it all in with a younger face, a less devious smile, and a whole hell of a lot quieter. You think he's going to be on Temu Twitter telling you his every move? No, he's going to shut the fuck up, go to the back of the room, and quietly usher in the rest of their plan. And by the time 2026 or even 2028 comes and you're ready to go vote, you'll find out, hey, you can't. And that's if you're not in an internment camp by then. Oh, Charlie, you're being hyperbolic. They told me last year I was being hyperbolic, and every fucking thing I said is happening right now. And this is why the Charlie Kirk Memorial was a spectacle. It was not a celebration of the life of Charlie Kirk. It was a celebration of the end of democracy and the beginning of the new age of Christian nationalism.